hello, and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with Sarah Morrissey, who is a pharmacist with Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy, and she's going to be talking about functional medicine. As you know, those of you that follow us, you probably know what functional medicine is. It gets to the root problem of what's causing symptoms instead of just treating symptoms. And in pharmacy, and Sarah can attest to this, one of the things that is common is that we prescribe drugs to treat symptoms instead of going to the root problem. Sarah, let's get into that now. No, Janet. Go ahead and tell us about functional medicine as a pharmacist.
So I got into the integrative health practitioner program, and basically exactly kind of what I've always believed in and always thought of going through school, right? Why are we having the problems? Like, we can't just keep band-aiding things together. So getting to the root issues and balancing the imbalances, getting rid of toxicities, supplementing where it needs supplementing. But at the end of the day, our sleep, our rest, our digestion, and, are so important, right? So exercise.
Yeah, I love it. Exactly. That's one of the reasons that we brought you on board at Professional Pharmacy, because, we want people to understand that pharmacists can be more than just dispensers of pills. And I literally say, dispensers of poison for big pharma.
Right.
Give an example of of a disease state that we treat regularly in the United States and how we need to get to the function. I know there's lots of them, but what would you say first is the most important?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many, right? I mean, we're going to go right off the bat with cardiovascular and probably diabetes, right? I mean, two of the biggest things that we can take care of at a base level, so that people. The problem is that what has become common, people call normal, right? But normal is not, common is not normal, right? The fact that people have to feel like they have to take these medications, and that's the only way that they can be healthy, just doesn't make sense. Right. And so get off of medications and help heal your body, right? It's things that cost nothing, right? Sleep, exercise, moving your body, and taking a look at what you're putting in it.
Exactly.
Right? What we surround ourselves with. And I know I've heard you say it a lot lately. Eating healthy is not expensive, right? Because when you start eating whole foods, nothing that comes from a package, you're more satiated, right? Your body knows what to do with those things. And so therefore, all the excuses that have been coined, and, it might not be as handy as driving through a drive-through. You have to plan and you have to prepare. But gosh, at the end of that day, where you would have normally stopped to eat fast food or eat crap food, you feel so much better, right? And then you get better rest, right? And then you're starting a positive upcycle of good things in your life. And to me, that really makes the big difference, as opposed to the downward stuck. Oh, I just did this. Oh, I just did that. Oh, I'll do better tomorrow. And yes, we can always do better tomorrow.
Right.
But starting at, just what we put in our body, our sleep, and our movement, right? Cheap and easy.
Right. It really is that simple. I mean, those are things you really have to do to stay alive anyway. You don't have to exercise to stay alive, but you do have to sleep. You do have to eat to stay alive.
Right.
So those are essentially free, and you have to do them anyway. And throwing movement on top of it is going to definitely make you feel a lot better.
Right.
So let's go back to cardiovascular disease. Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Okay. You ready?
Uh-oh. Don't test my pharmaceutical knowledge.
No, because I don't even know a lot about that stuff anymore. So let's, what would you say?
Well, I feel like there's three. cholesterol. Change your lifestyle one little bit. And so now they're going to add another one. And just because they need to check that box off, you're going to get a statin too.
Exactly. Okay.
So
let's go into the root cause. So, what causes hypertension? If they don't need, if diuretics don't work, what's causing the hypertension?
right. So just the decreased functionality of our cells in our body. Right. Our ATP is not working as good as it needs to in our mitochondria. So our cells are not functioning. We've got an imbalance of electrolytes. We've possibly got, and toxicity somewhere, right? Whether it be heavy metal, whether it be, bacterial type things, or anything, right? But just an imbalance. There's an imbalance, and it needs to, if that gets modulated and balanced, therefore everything starts running better, right? So we've got osmotic pressures that aren't right within the body as well.
Right, and it is true, and even it's standard knowledge and standard of care that hypertension is probably more dangerous than high cholesterol. Now we're going to get into cholesterol later. But so what about hypertension and obesity? I think inflammation and obesity related disease kills more Americans than anything. And for the most part, obesity can cause diabetes and cause cardiovascular disease. And there's an American that dies every 2 seconds from cardiovascular disease. Think about that.
Right.
And hypertension is probably one of the major causes. So, and obesity does contribute to hypertension. So, losing weight is probably going to be one of the most important factors of blood pressure control, correct?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And the other thing, when you think about every little fat molecule, they tend to hold on to toxic substances, right? And so that's your body trying to defend itself about, against all the things all the crud that we're putting in it, what we're exposed to, right? So, so that's a whole nother soapbox of things. But the more your heart has to work because it has to get that blood through more mass, right? And if it's not fit enough, that's why we've got the blood,
Exactly.
the cardiac issues, right? So it's at the end of the day, we're muscles, cells, atoms make up cells, and cells make up the muscles. And so if those are not strong, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And that's why I've had a job for a long time as well.
Yeah, right. It's interesting you say that because, over my career of 30 plus years, it's always had, pharmacists are going to be taken out of the job because for XYZ reasons, either technicians are going to take our job or, now it's AI is going to take our job. Well, I know for a fact, and you probably agree with the same, I am not worried about AI taking my job because there's too much things I do to directly communicate and educate patients. If, pharmacists or any healthcare professional for that matter, if all they're doing is checking boxes, then I would worry about AI taking their job.
Right.
But,
yes.
I'm not concerned about that. Anyway, there's a little side note there. Okay. So on, what about cholesterol? So we hear about cholesterol and how dangerous it is, and saturated fat and high cholesterol causes cardiovascular disease. And so we prescribe statins. So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are about statins and cholesterol, and getting to the root cause of lipid management.
Right. I've always struggled with statins, especially like when I was in pharmacy school. I was on rotation, and one of the gals that I was on rotation with had worked in a place in which they were testing statins and high dose statins, and how the people that were in these trials were not well. And I don't know enough about it. I just know enough to say that, they were walking zombies, and that was just, third-hand knowledge, from the gal that saw it firsthand, right? And so I've always questioned them, and I think they've always done more damage than they've done good. And because if you look at, let's go back to basic cellular biology. What is the most important component of a cell? in the phospholipid bilayer?
Cholesterol.
Cholesterol.
But yet we
Cholesterol
vil-
is the skeleton
Right.
of every cell,
But
right?
yet we vilify it.
And so it's
Right.
been vilified so badly, when really it's the inflammation, because cholesterol, the cholesterol will actually go and like try to protect your body. So why is it working so hard to protect your body, right? So it's the inflammation that's coming beforehand that I think is, causing the scare of these cholesterol situations. But yeah, I've always struggled with that.
That was, I can say I haven't always struggled with them. You're smarter than I am.
Mhm.
But I will say that it was the first drug that I think Janet and I started questioning. It's like, these statins start making sense, just
Yep.
for your point about cholesterol. And then the point that, wait a minute, these things have been out for a long time now. And yet cardiovascular disease is at an all-time high. They're not working.
Well, right.
Obviously they're not
much.
working. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I mean, and of course, right, because being influenced by, the profession and things, right, where, I'd see people come in and be like, oh, well, at least you're on a low dose, right? Like, I guess I would kind of console myself. Well, at least you're on a low dose, and, but watch out, if your memory starts going, if your, muscles are aching, if you're just chronically feeling like crud, more so than what you did before you started this medication.
and hepatotoxicity,
Right.
I mean, you have to get your liver checked regularly because they're hepatotoxic.
Yeah.
There's been some of them. Baycol was taken off the market. That might have been before your time. Baycol was taken off the market for hepatotoxicity.
Right.
I don't think Crestor, Lipitor, Zocor, Mepicor are any more safe when it comes to hepatotoxicity than Baycol was. I mean, a drug with that kind of side effects is just it's almost crazy to think that we call it standard of care, but it's $1 trillion market.
And they even tried making it go OTC there for a while.
Yeah,
Didn't
they would love the drug company. Would love it. So speaking of OTC, let's go into reflux. There's some OTC drugs that are used for reflux. Back when I was in pharmacy school, I think omeprazole, so Prilosec was the first one that came out, and it was prescription only. Now you can, of course, get omeprazole over the counter. So
big containers.
Yes,
big containers.
Tell us about reflux and what actually causes the problem.
Efficiency. This is another one that I always struggled with as well. First and foremost, the stomach is meant to be an acidic environment, right?
Facts.
The little sphincter at the top of your stomach that holds the food in there gets turned on at a low pH, which means an acidic environment, right? So we're pH 1 to 2 from what I was kind of reading, in some of the newer stuff. That's the remote, the acid level is the remote control for that sphincter to stay closed so that your food stays and gets digested, right? So, but let's think about the start of digestion, right? Chewing our food. So if we go back to just the food we're chewing,
yeah, that's probably the most
is not really that good, right? And I mean, who hasn't just inhaled their food, right? But chewing, mastication, that stimulates your saliva glands, right? So, and your amylase, right? So you're going to start breaking down your digestion right there. Okay, so
amylase.
The amylase, yep, we'll start breaking it down right there. And so when we're not chewing well, so our food's getting into our stomach, we're filling it up too far, right?
Overeating.
We're just overeating,
right?
And we're really good at it. And so therefore the stomach can't keep up. Okay, well now let's throw in omeprazole, right? So let's shut off the proton pumps in our stomach. The proton pumps are what create the acid in our stomach in order to help with digestion. So when we shut those off, now they're getting into a basic environment and we're not digesting at all in the stomach or the darn. And so it's just, once again, a revolving downhill spiral.
And hydrochloric acid, or
the hydrochloric acid,
which is in our stomach, the acid in our stomach is created to help us digest food. I mean,
Yes.
acids dissolve things.
Yes.
That's what our stomach is supposed to do. And and not only that, but it kills bad bacteria. It kills anything that we ingest that could be poisonous, possibly. Not always, because there are obviously poisons that we can ingest that doesn't stop it. But so to take a drug that chronically lowers or it stops your acid from being produced,
right,
is just a problem. I mean, that's an obvious problem. And these drugs are indicated, package insert, FDA approved. They're indicated for 6 weeks. How long have you practiced pharmacy?
17 years.
Have you known anybody that has been on omeprazole for 17 years?
Yes.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
I can't, I mean, they've been on it for 2 decades and we've seen it.
And originally it was only 2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
it was meant for 2 weeks. And I think there is a time and place, when we've had done poor things to our body, we've got the ulcers, whatever. Yep, we might give it a break. To heal the stomach and the gut in the meantime, right?
If you keep eating,
But
well, first of all, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had GERD and I know how to get GERD again. I just got to eat like
right.
And I wake up with GERD and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yep.
And I mean, my answer is not omeprazole. And I get it long term if somebody's done that over and over and they've got, esophageal erosion and stuff. There's other issues, but also the issue always is still what caused it. Change your diet. Yes. Yeah, there's a comment. Let's look at that comment. Yes. It's not spam. Nice discussion. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So and I will say with one of the things that bugs me the most is that I think that every GI disease is diet related. I don't care what people say about genetics. I don't care what doctors say about, because one of the things they'll say is Crohn's. Well, Crohn's, you can't fix Crohn's with the diet. Okay. I mean, seriously, have you tried? Do we need a $3,000 a month drug? I don't even know what the drug of choice is for Crohn's anymore. And I don't care because I think Crohn's, I think ulcerative colitis, IBS. I love IBS because
it's just the catch-all.
Yeah, right.
It's the catch-all.
And by the way, I think we can all have IBS if we eat the wrong stuff. Yes. I can't.
Or if and stress, right? To me, stress and rest, go hand in hand with what we're putting in our body. And so, yeah, if you can start controlling those things, our gut problems kind of go away. If
don't eat fast food, so eat whole foods. So give us some examples.
So like I like to, as far as even just starting our day, I know that protein is important, but we have to have something nice and easy to digest in the mornings, right? As our bodies, start honoring our body's natural rhythms, even though none of us really know what that is anymore nowadays, right? Because we've lived this go, 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 go mentality and world, and it's just part of reality. But we can help and change so that we can start our day with something that's easy to digest, right? So some fruits, some vegetables, some protein, however that looks for you. Probably not the steak and eggs right off the bat. We ease into that throughout the day, right? But it's just, if you just think about it as, I'm going to eat stuff that is, A, it doesn't come in a package because that's just easy to think about. But B, doesn't have an ingredient list. People are like, oh, well, I'm like, well, no, you just eat whole foods. Like, just eat the whole food. And if it doesn't have an ingredient list, go ahead. Now, if you have a package that's full of single ingredients and you can decipher what those are, that works too, right? For convenience, right? But just starting to be aware of what's in our food, because our food sources, it's a struggle. And I mean, granted, that's part of feeding the masses, but I think if we can take it, if you as an individual can take your own accountability, it will help change those things.
So talk about type 2 diabetes, and I'm going to check our audio. We have somebody that says our audio is not great. Well, our mics are working, so go ahead and talk about type 2 diabetes.
Type 2 diabetes, right? So that's where it's insulin resistance, right? So, and I think a lot of that came with the whole, somewhere along the line, we became snackers and grazers. Well, it turns out we're not a horse or a cow. And so therefore, letting our body get used to having the movement between meals and allowing insulin to do its job, right? I think insulin just gets bombarded in our life. And so if we, space our meals out and go back to eating 3 squares, whatever that looks like, it gives our body the time to digest it, utilize the glucose and the nutrients that came with that meal, and then give it a time of rest before it's bombarded again. But when you keep bombarding the body with food that it has to digest, and insulin has no choice but to be overworked, and pretty soon it just doesn't function as well. It's like the whole
I think
cry
part
wolf
of it,
thing.
yeah, and I think part of it is, you talk about 3 meals a day, and I think for most Americans that are sedentary, I don't think 3 meals a day is appropriate. And you talk about breakfast, and I mean, there's debate on this all the time, and people ultimately with a diet, people have to find out what works for them.
Yes.
But I will say that's part of the problem, is that people are constantly fed, so their blood glucose never comes down, so their insulin is always up to try to get rid of their blood glucose. And I think fasting is important.
Yes.
And our bodies are meant to fast. I mean, one of the reasons that we store fat so well is because our bodies are trained to be in periods of no food.
Right. Yes.
So, constantly eating throughout the day, and like you said, especially grazing and things like that, it's just keeping your blood sugar and your insulin levels up. And, that's obviously a big problem. And I think high insulin is the most important thing when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to cardiovascular disease, when it comes to almost every disease. I think it's high insulin. Insulin is one of the most inflammatory substances that we have in our body.
Right, and I mean it's natural, but it's getting overworked, overutilized, and it can only do so much, right? The body can only do so much with it. Yeah, and fasting, that's been really neat, with the more and more research and studies. Once again, honoring your body, right? Females need to fast a different way than males do, but just because of the timing of our cycles.
And depending on menopause too.
Yep. And so, but learning why you're fasting, gosh, makes it so much easier, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to starve myself and I'm not going to eat. No, you're going to allow your body to go into autophagy. You're going to allow your body to go into healing, because when, that's how our body discards all the crud that it's been accumulating, right? And so it's when you learn how important, and like, I'm going to just say magical, how magical fasting can be done properly. It's powerful. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a great tool. And I think you have to learn when to fast, and, learn about your body. I think one of the worst things we do is that we don't change our, back in the day, we would change how we ate based on our activity. For instance, when we were hunters and gatherers, for instance, you would go out and hunt after you chase an animal, and then you'd eat it. But now we just open the fridge or the freezer.
Right.
We have to go out and chase anything. So, and then, back in the day when you didn't have an animal for a few days, you might have some berries or something that you collected. But you didn't have a whole bunch of them. You still had to work to do that. Part of our problem nowadays is we don't have to work to get food.
Right.
And we have an unlimited food source. Most of us, I don't care what There's very few exceptions to this in America. That's why we have an obesity epidemic. But most of us have an unlimited food source.
Yes.
Darn near an unlimited food source. And one of the
Yep.
worst places is at our home. We have a pantry full of food. We have a freezer full of food. And that just used to not be the case. So it's easy to overeat when you have all this food stored up.
Yeah, I feel like the most people do the running after their DoorDash guy that brings their food.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this DoorDash thing?
I know. I am so surprised about how many people use DoorDash to get their fast food delivered to them.
Right. If that doesn't say something right there.
Right. It's just the culture we live in. And when you talked earlier about, eating healthy is not expensive. Well, that's true. And I don't think you can reasonably eat if you're honest with yourself and what you're going to order when you eat fast food. You can always say there's a 99-cent menu or a $2 menu or something.
Right.
But nobody ever just orders a $2 menu. It's like, oh yeah, Taco Bell's got a taco for $1.99 today. We're just going to have a taco. No, let me throw some Mexi fries on there, and let me, because it's only an extra $2, and then let me throw a large soda on there,
right?
And then they've got those little Crustitos things or whatever for dessert. Okay, so next thing you know, it's $15 and 2,000 calories, which is more calories than most people need to consume in a day, to sustain themselves. So
and you could have spent $5 on some fruits and veggies and been satiated for the next 3 hours.
Yeah. And I mean, throw some protein in there.
Throw some protein. Always throw some protein in there. Yep.
Yeah. It's much. And then you throw the DoorDash on there, and then you got another fee on there. It's like, so eating fast food is not less expensive. Definitely. So, and as Janet often says, you can either pay now or pay later. So even if it was more expensive to eat healthy, although it's not, you're going to pay for it in the long run. That's for sure.
Yes. And that goes right along with choose your hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
What's hard, nourishing yourself and spending the time now or spending the time in a hospital bed, that one hospital bed, that one stay is a lot more expensive.
Exactly.
Than, just making some better choices for yourself. And it doesn't have to be huge, like just little choices every day, to help build that foundation for people.
Yeah, you're right. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I think we make it too complicated.
Yeah.
Some of the things that Jan, I like to say with sleep, for instance, is, we are meant to sleep at night and work during the day. And if you have any kind of illness problems and you were working night shift, you need to change that. Those are just the facts. And working in healthcare, we have colleagues and people that work those kinds of shifts, and we're not meant to work at night. It is detrimental to our health. So, and get at least 8 hours of sleep at night. It's really that.
Give yourself
it's that simple.
That 7 to 9. You give yourself 8 hours of sleep opportunity. That's huge. Right?
Go to bed the same time every night.
Yep.
Try to get up the same time every morning, within an hour or two of each other.
Yep.
And you already said it with diet, but if it comes in a box or it has multiple ingredients, don't eat it.
Yeah.
We like to say, if it doesn't rot, don't eat it. That's another tip.
I love that. That.
And
how scary is it that so many things in our food system now doesn't rot? And I'm like,
right.
Why is that cheese not moldy?
Yeah.
Why did that bread not go moldy? Like this, it's frightening.
Right. Bacteria and fungus won't grow on it.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to try to assimilate it in our body. It's like, okay, that's probably not going to work very well.
Yeah.
And then, Janet says, when shopping, shop the perimeters of the aisles.
Yes.
And that is largely true, because that's where all the fresh stuff is. Now, I get it. Some of you haters out there, you keto people, will say, which I love you guys, will say, well, there's baked goods in the perimeter of the aisle. There's breads and stuff. I totally agree.
But
I totally agree.
You can veer around those too.
Yeah, but I also argue that I don't think, and not that the bread today is the same as it was 1,000 years ago, but 100 years ago, bread was a common food in America, and Americans weren't obese. But we made our own bread. We didn't buy it at the store. So we didn't have an unlimited supply of it. It was like, once you made your loaf of bread for the day, then it was gone.
Right.
You had to do it again the next day. But I'll also argue that you could eat bread if you're burning the calories. It's more about you
Right.
can eat more carbohydrates if you're more active. Those are just facts. So, but most Americans probably should stay away from that because
Right.
they're not active.
Yeah.
What else are we missing? Movement. As humans, we're meant to move all day long. We were designed to move all day long, not be sedentary.
Yep.
You don't have to have a gym membership.
No.
You don't have to have fancy weights. You don't have to have a gym at home. You don't have to have all this kind of equipment. Don't use that as a barrier. Just move and do something.
Yeah.
And, especially if you're starting from nothing, but that could also mean body weight exercises.
Body weight exercises are amazing, right? And I don't do enough of them, but I know, even this morning, okay, I had to be here a little earlier. Well, guess what? That walk was so amazing this morning because it was just half an hour earlier than normal. So the sunrise was that much better, right? Like it's just, And so those are, and that's become a non-negotiable for me, right? Like whether it's walking or jogging every morning, my dog helps me out there, but
awesome.
It just really gets everything going better, right? If you have to use one more hour in your day, do it in the morning to get your day off right.
I agree with that. It's easiest to start working out in the morning. It might be the hardest because nobody likes getting up early. At least I don't.
Well, unless you've got your good sleep in.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier.
But it's easier to say no in the morning than it is after in the evening, when after you've been through work and you've had all these other decisions to make. It's easier to have decision fatigue and say, I'm tired of making decisions, so I'm going to make a decision to not work out.
Right.
So getting it done earlier in the day is always the best thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
And once again, another free thing, right? Another free thing that we're just blessed to be able to do, right?
Exactly.
And even if you're, sedentary or you have an injury or something, you can always do something. Right? And we know you got some soup cans in the pantry, or you've got something, you can always do just movement, and it doesn't take much. I feel like even the 5 to 10 squats every hour or something, right? Like just getting up and moving, setting that little alarm on your phone, because we all have those with us, right? We can set that alarm every 45 minutes to an hour and say, hey, I need to move, I need to stretch, I need to walk around the building, whatever it is. It's doable. And if we start making that the norm, right? Because people are like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm taking a wellness break for 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and therefore I'm going to be way more productive after that. And so, it's just movement is key, and it's free, it's cheap, it's easy.
Push-ups. Push-ups.
Yes, push-ups are good.
Yeah. So Sarah, as we wrap this podcast up, tell us what you have a passion for.
Helping people. I really.
That's why we went into pharmacy, right?
Well, yeah, and because I didn't want to take the essay to be a physical therapist, but once again, it was helping people. How can I help the people? And so and after, yes, I'm passionate about rodeoing. I'm passionate about just life and doing things, but really at the end of the day, helping people who want to be helped is so exciting. I love it in healthcare, wellness, whatever space that is, roping, like I do roping clinics, things like that. And so it's just, that's what fills my cup. Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, we're created to be with people and to help people. We really are. So it is very rewarding when we get to help people, no matter in what capacity that is. So if anybody has any questions or wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
I do have a website now, and it is called winningwellnessllc.com. And then I do have Facebook and Instagram. And I do have a LinkedIn and stuff as well.
I think that's where we found you.
I've got all sorts of stuff out there, but it's it's in its beginning stages for the Winning Wellness component. But everything's in growth mode.
Awesome. Or you could always call the pharmacy, Mosaic Professional Pharmacy, and we will tell you how to get a hold of Sarah. So
indeed.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. You've helped us realize our goal of this podcast, which is to educate and empower consumers to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.